Well, hi, and thanks for dropping into my shop, but we're not in my shop at the moment. We're actually in my office here. We're looking straight on at my ham radio. This one here, the Kenwood TS-430S. And this, by the way, is my antenna matcher, antenna tuner, and this is just a scanner up above. It's nothing to do with what we're doing today. This switch I'll explain in a moment. And we're going to be comparing this radio to this little black box down here. Now this little black box is a PCR1000, an Icom radio, and this you see on my computer is the control screen for it, if you like. So this whole radio is controlled by computer only. There's no knobs or dials on it or anything. Unlike this one, which is full of knobs and dials. And of course, this is really intended for ham radio operation. This is a transceiver, has a transmitter. So now I'll explain why I've got this switch here. So this is just an antenna switch. And what it does, in this setting, it switches the antenna on to my ham radio alone. So just my ham radio, and you can hear it here. That's a little PSK coming in at 14070. Because this radio transmits, I can never ever have another radio connected to the antenna when I go to transmit with this, or I'll be pumping a huge signal into the back of some other radio. It doesn't sound like a good idea to me. When I transmit about 20 watts. Not a lot, but about 20 watts. I'm sure that's enough to blow the front end of many radios. So for this radio to reach the antenna, it's alone. When I switch the switch this way, now the antenna is connected to all the other radios in my house, basically. This little one, there's a SB600 and R398 right behind me, a Satellite Millennium, they're all connected, and there's a line that goes from here into my shop. In fact, here's the line. It's not actually plugged in, so we don't have to worry about that. So the signal is split many times, and it's just split without any kind of care. Just the wire splits. So this guy gets a share of the signal from the antenna. This guy gets the whole shooting match. That's the only real difference here. Maybe I should comment on the sound. The output of both these radios is fed through my sound card and comes out of my computer speakers, one of which is right under here. Not that it matters too much where the speaker is, but so on the audio output side, fairly similarly treated. Input side on the antenna, the same antenna, except this guy's gets a weaker, a smaller piece of the signal that's available on the antenna. And this guy is really intended for ham radio use, but you know what? It's a full band receiver. Works fairly well. So we're at 14070. Let's start right there. May not be the best place to start, but let's start there. So I'll put this guy on to 14.070. This is the frequency where ham radio PSK 31 is practiced. So now, I do this right. Now that sound, we're listening to this radio. I'll have to keep telling you which radio we're listening to. We're listening to this one. And that sound you just heard is a PSK 31 ham radio signal. Now, it's gone at the moment. Not much activity. Wrong time of day for lots of activity, but then we don't want lots of activity during these tests. So here. Okay, now I'll switch over. Something not quite right here. Oh, I have to turn this off. There we go. Yeah, one more thing. This radio has a software flaw in the software, a well-known flaw. You cannot run the frequency display here and be on USB upper sideband or lower sideband simultaneously. You got to turn this off. for this to work. It's just, it's a shortfall in the radio. So that's what this radio hears. Now we'll switch. Okay, so we're listening to this one. Listening just to this one now. Switch. Switch back. Switch again. Switch back. It's the ham radio again. Very loud signal there. Well, I don't think there's any question here. This is receiving a much cleaner, noise-free signal. There's no question about it. So let's go try a little bit of just the AM stuff here. We'll try, let's try 15. On here, we'll put this one to 15 now. Now we'll switch the antenna onto this radio. Hold on. Sorry, I was still on upper sideband, so we'll switch back. You hear this radio. Very clear, very strong. Very little hiss, good bass, response even. I can hear it. Now we'll switch. Signal strength on this meter is running around 9. Not that it means an awful lot. Now we're ready to switch back. I think now we're getting a fair comparison. So we're hearing this guy. Now we'll switch back to the PCR. Well, I think there's a noticeable improvement in fidelity with the PCR. Back again. Switch back. So I think you can see the audio is much more open on the PCR. It's got a filter, it's set to 6. Right now we'll narrow it down to 3. Probably more similar to this radio now. They're probably both running around this, I'm guessing. Now we'll compare back to this radio. Here we go. A very similar sound now. Hear some background hiss with this one. And I'm not sure where that's coming from. If it's signal on the antenna or something in the radio. It really sounds like something in the radio. We'll switch back again. So you can hear the AVC spike. When we first switched on to the PCR, the AVC is wide open, and it takes a moment for the AVC to close down the sensitivity of the radio. And during that time, you hear a crash, if you like, or that's not the right word. You hear it extra loud for a moment. So I'll demonstrate that. Now switch back, and the demonstration was terrible, as is usually the case, right? So let's go listen now to some actual talk. So we'll stay we're on AM, and we'll work our way up here. this signal here. Nice strong signal. I'm going to open the bandwidth on this to 6. At 15140, so we'll put this up at 15. Well, there's no keypad on this radio, so you got to work your way up there. And we'll now switch radios. My antenna switch is a little... So there we are. And we'll now switch. There, you can hear that AVC crack or spike there. Now I've got this one set to 6 kilohertz bandwidth. I'll put it down to 3, so it's similar to this radio now. And we will switch. We're listening to this. And now we will switch back. Well, the bandwidth on this sounds bigger than 3. So let's put this back to wide. Don't have many choices with these radios. Let's switch back. That hiss is curious to me. Just doesn't sound like atmospheric hiss. Yeah, it's going up and down with the AVC. I'm not sure what to make of that. Okay, let's go back to the PCR. So I think the PCR is definitely performing better here in this arrangement. Here's another very strong signal up here. Let's go up here. 15340. 15340. You can see one of the downfalls of the Kenwood. 15340. And we'll switch. Okay, so the whole time we've been doing this test, this has been in the circuit, tuned to whatever it's tuned to. Doesn't look like it's tuned to anything in particular, does it? But I switched to bypass, so we got a different signal result on this. So I think maybe I've just bogused my whole test here. Let's do another couple quick ones with this set on bypass. So this is no longer in the circuit. Got myself a little mixed up there. So we're listening to the PCR right now. Lovely strong signal. And this guy, I turned him down. switch now. So it's pretty clear. Literally. PCR far superior over this radio. Not too happy with how that sounds, actually. Sounds like the antenna's not well connected. Wow.
La sala de monitoreo internacional, las informaciones que corresponden a la política específico y colaborando también con otras programaciones
what do I do now?
deportes, cultura, medio ambiente.
Well, I just did a big test with a poorly connected antenna. Okay, let's just keep going because you know, this is basically live TV. What you see is what you get. So I don't fix everything up perfectly and then start these videos and then make a perfect video. I just jump into them, and unfortunately you get what you get with me. So let's compare them now, because after wiggling, just tightening the antenna connection slightly on the back of this radio, it seems to have come to light. So we're on 340 and we will switch. Yeah, now they're much more comparable. Switch back. You know, other than the closed down audio, I have an audio filter here, but there's no circuits in the radio for this, in case you've noticed this setting. So not very comfortable to listen to broadcast on this radio because of the narrow band. We'll switch back to the PCR. We'll narrow it down. I can't use my finger. Narrow it down. And now we'll compare back. Almost identical now. Now on the single strength meter, this meter is bouncing around 9. 9 and up into the red, and the meter on this radio is doing just about the same thing, isn't it? Maybe a little bit higher. And again, you can't really compare those meters. They're not particularly calibrated well. I'll take that back. Some of them are calibrated perfectly well. Many of them aren't, so you're never sure what you got. That's the problem there. Well, let's go back to 15. Crank, 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 crank. See if I can do 2 radios at once here. It's like walking and chewing gum. Okay, so we're almost on... Yeah, we're both back on WWV. First, we'll listen to this radio. There it is. Okay, we're on a narrow bandwidth now. Now we'll switch to this radio. Well, again, I think this is a little bit of a wider bandwidth, so we'll switch wide on here. Flip again.
15 hours, 37 minutes, coordinated universal time.
Well, there you are. I'm not sure we need to do too much more comparison. I think, sorry about the earlier part of the video in which this radio wasn't showing up quite as good as it could. Once I fixed the antenna on it, this radio performed the way I've experienced it in the past, which is extremely similar to the PCR in terms of sensitivity. There's nothing wrong with this radio. This is another fine radio, no doubt about it. But it's really intended to be used as a ham radio. So it's really set up, focused on that. It's not really meant for shortwave listening and the like. But this particular radio covers the entire shortwave bands, all frequencies, so it can be used that way. And you saw the downfall with not having a keypad on this kind of radio. You got to turn that knob forever to get to where you're going. Anyway, well, thank you for watching this one. Not too sure I really proved anything of any sort, and then again in these videos I'm not trying to prove anything, I'm just showing you what I find here in my own setup with my own radio. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that.